Welcome. We want to welcome you to this evening's candidate forum presented by the League of Women Voters of the Holland area. I am Claudia Berry, President of the League of Women Voters. Along with several other members of our local chapter, we are proud to offer this opportunity for voters in the city of Holland to learn more about the individuals running for mayor of the city of Holland. We must remember that the League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan political organization. We encourage informed and active participation in government. We work to increase an understanding of major political policy issues and influences, and we look at public policy through education and advocacy. The League is open to all citizens of voting age. The League never supports or opposes candidates, but we do take positions on issues that we have studied and come to consensus on them at the local, state, and national level. At this time, I would like to request that you please turn off your cell phones or other electronic communication devices. No cameras or taping equipment is permitted other than authorized by the League of Women Voters. This program will be recorded and available for viewing a few days after the event at www.lwvholland.org. The League of Women Voters will offer the opportunity for a forum when there are multiple candidates running for a seat. In keeping with our mission statement this evening, we have invited candidates who are opposing one another in the November 5 mayoral election. Candidates are Nathan Box and Nancy DeBoer. Paula Lewison and Tina Pollack will be the timers for tonight. And now I would like to introduce Penny Schuff, who will read the rules for this event and moderate the discussion. Thank you.
Good evening. Thank you for all being here. She already said about the cell phones. The operative word here, I'll just jump right to it, is forum tonight. That means a forum is a place for ideas and views to be exchanged. This is not a debate. This may disappoint some of you, but it's not a debate, which would mean we would be arguing or opposing views, and we will not be doing that tonight. There will be no crosstalk among the candidates. And as the moderator, I will allow for some clarifications within reason, but I do reserve the right to interrupt and to move on to another subject if I feel that we're moving into a mean-spirited tone. However, I'm not anticipating that. The candidates were provided a copy of these rules in advance of tonight's event. The first one is the order of who speaks first was determined by alphabetical order by the candidate's last name, hence Mr. Box and Mayor DeBoer. Each candidate will have an opening statement of 2 minutes, and then the question and answer period will follow with each candidate having 2 minutes to respond to each of their questions. At approximately 8:20, each candidate will then get 2 minutes for a closing statement. Time limits will be strictly observed. Our timekeepers will first hold up a 30-second card indicating how much time remains. Oh, a 1 minute, sorry, a 1 minute. That's fair, okay. And then the stop card will be held, and so that's halfway through. You'll get a warning, and then the stop card will ask the candidate to stop his or her statements. The audience will please refrain from applauding or demonstrating support or non-support for a candidate. I really have to, I know there's a lot of anticipation, a lot of interest, but I must ask that you do that. Questions from the audience will be allowed after it's been determined that the written questions have been exhausted. At this point, I'm really not anticipating that, but if an audience member is asked to identify themselves before they have a question, I will allow that when we get to there. You may address the specific candidate, but then the other candidate will also be given a chance, and it will also be 2 minutes. I'm really not sure that we'll be doing that tonight. Again, I reserve the right to interrupt if I deem an audience member or a candidate is engaging in a personal attack, and you would obviously want that to happen. Campaign signs are not allowed inside this room. A table with the candidate information is in the lobby, and the candidates are invited to stick around and meet with members of the audience and the media at the end of the program. And I would just say one more thing, just as a tip, make sure you're speaking directly into the mic. If you do end up turning, that can affect your audibility. So with no further ado, and I will say the league started something this time around where we had questions that people submitted online, and we got a plethora of feedback, so I'm reading these pretty much word for word. The first one is to Mr. Box. Do you want to do opening statements first? No, I want you to do opening statements first. I'm not going to talk. Sorry, I'm getting excited. All right.
Thank you. Thank you to the League of Women Voters for organizing this forum. Thank you to everyone who came here tonight. And thank you, Nancy, for sharing the stage. My name is Nathan Box, and I want to serve as your next mayor of Holland. My wife and I met 30 years ago as Hope College students. We've got 3 great kids and a wonderful daughter-in-law, Michelle. Elizabeth and our kids went to Holland Public. Michelle went to Holland Christian. Elizabeth's a teacher in Hudsonville, and I own and operate a small business here in Holland, Central Park Law. Over the last 20 years, I've chosen to dedicate a large portion of my time to public service. I've served on 15 different boards and commissions, and more often than not, was elected chair. I was on the library board for 12 years. I chaired the Tulip Time Board, the Zoning Board, the Habitat Board, and helped form Jubilee Ministries. I co-chaired the Civic Center Place fundraising campaign, and I'm currently the chair of the Civic Center Place board. I love Holland, and I love to serve. But I hear whispers around town that I'm a socialist, I'm a California hippie, and that I like to sneak out in the middle of the night and stomp on tulips with my bare feet. Let me assure you, none of these whispers are true. If you're an undecided voter, or if you're wondering if you should cast your ballot for me, let me tell you who I really am. I'm a family man, a small business owner, a Hope College graduate, and a member of Christ Memorial Church. None of the whispers are true. 2 years ago, when the Civic Center project was underfunded and off the rails, the mayor needed someone to lead the fundraising campaign and get the project back on track. Who did she call? Nancy, you called me. And I was happy to do it because I love this community and I am dedicated to making it more successful and prosperous. Since the mayor has faith and confidence in me and my leadership, you should too. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor DeBoer.
Thank you.
2 minutes.
Thank you to the League of Women Voters for providing this forum for our residents, both here and those that will be viewing online. Thank you, voters, for coming out tonight, even though it turned beautiful after all the storms, because you care about Holland's future. The city has made great progress in my past 4 years as mayor and in my prior years on council. I didn't come into this position as someone who always wanted to be in it. I decided to go into government after others in the community encouraged me to run because they saw skills of leadership and a listening ear. I've been grateful to serve as the only councilwoman for the past 14 years, and I'm pleased that the balance in gender is going to continue to change here as we need a council that represents a broader variety of people. Many want to be in leadership when times are good, but I have also served on council in bad times, when we have had to make difficult decisions of cutting budgets when the economy was in very bad shape. I have voted to decrease the budget when needed and decrease the size of government, and have never voted to raise taxes other than a tiny increase for a much-needed firefighter. A mayoral position is all about connectedness and trust. We have great opportunities ahead of us in the future. I believe my experience during both good and bad economic times and my proven track record for growth in this city speak for themselves. I'm unwilling to rest. We must pursue the important goals of more affordable and mixed housing, a vision for the waterfront, connecting young talent and business, and providing fiber for our neighborhoods. All of that takes connections and trust in this position of leadership. Thank you for providing this forum to allow voters to see the differences between us as candidates. Thank you.
Okay, now we're ready for questions. Okay, the first one to you, Mr. Box. What is one barrier to Holland becoming the best that it can be? And what will you do as mayor in the next year to overcome that barrier?
Thank you. I think one of the biggest barriers that we have in this community right now is not everyone feels that they are as valued as everyone else in this community. We've got a very, very rich tapestry of people in Holland with lots to contribute. I spent 17 years working with the Chamber of Commerce in their leadership development program. Every single year, I would meet with new upcoming leaders in the community, and every single year, people would come up to me and say, you know what, I've been here for 2 years, I've been here for 5 years, I've been here for 10 years, and I just don't know how I'm gonna fit into this community. I also hear that from local employers, that people come into this town and they think it's a great town, it's a beautiful town, it's a great place to live, I love it, I've got lots of connections, but the people that are coming in are having a difficult time finding ways to get involved. And the first thing that we need to do as a community is recognize that this is actually an issue in this community. Until we recognize that this is an issue and decide to do something about it, we're not going to be able to get beyond that barrier. I learned a great lesson from my dad at a kindergarten visitation day. I went to go see our oldest son at kindergarten, and my dad came along with me to be the grandparent that was there. And I sat down next to Duncan, and my dad went off in the corner and found a little girl who did not have a parent with her. And he grabbed her by the hand and came and sat next to her in the circle. I looked at him, I said, Dad, you're here for Duncan. You're not here for this little girl. He goes, no, she needs me more. I had a conversation with a friend who's lived here for 22 years. He owns a small business in town. His kids go to Holland Christian. His wife went to Hope College. He said to me he went to Christ Memorial Church men's morning breakfast for 3 times before somebody finally took him by the hand. And I think that's what we need to do. We need to recognize that we have a problem. We need to decide that we're going to do something about it, and we need to act.
Okay, same question to you, Ms. Mayor. What is one barrier to Holland becoming the greatest it can be? And what would you do as mayor in the first year to overcome that barrier?
Well, I think Holland, as like everywhere else, is feeling the crush of national and state disintegration of civil conversation. I think with social media and all of that, it comes into a local situation more than it used to. And I thought I was just feeling that as in Holland. But then when I traveled to statewide events and they had whole sessions on the psychology of the public now and how hard it is to help everybody feel connected and welcome and listened to and significant in a community, I realized it wasn't Holland only, and that it's something that we are all working on across the country, really. There is a program that I heard about in, I think it's San Francisco, and they have a clearinghouse of all different nonprofits and other types of things that people can get involved in. And you can go online and type in whatever you're passionate about and whatever you'd like to make a difference in, and you can connect with a group like that, and you can find it online. I think that would be a great thing to start here. I know the Chamber does that wonderful leadership sessions that they have with people from all different businesses as they come here, and that is a great program to help people understand what's available in our community and how we'll only be a great community going forward if we all step up to be a part of what our passion is to make it better. And so I think that is a great program also to help us find how to connect. And it also goes right down to the individual. Every one of us is a welcoming committee. How we react to the person that we walk by on the street is what they take home. And the time when we walk by someone and we're not willing to talk to them and we don't act like we care, that hurts. I've moved a lot as a child. I know what that feels like. And I started to learn that I had to be the one that said hi.
Thank you.
And I'll stop.
Okay. Well, let's move to one issue that got a lot of response, as I said, online and physically here, and that is affordable housing. That's on lots of people's minds. And this is a very lengthy question, but I think it's important, and so we're going to start with this one. This person says, we are losing population of young adults in their 20s and early 30s to outlying areas such as Grand Rapids and Kalamazoo. What are your ideas on how to increase housing and rentals that are actually affordable for those caught in the middle of neither low income nor middle through upper income that can't afford average cost of housing in Holland? Are you willing to work with the townships to help tackle this problem in order to retain a balance to our population and our community? Mr. Box.
Did you want to start with the mayor on that one?
I'm sorry.
Yep.
Miss Mayor.
No problem. Yeah, affordable housing is a big problem. And again, it's not only Holland's problem. It is a national problem. It's a statewide problem. And I just came back from a conference, and that was what everybody was talking about there also. It is a problem because we have a big gap in what people earn, the high-level people and then the starting people. I know my son is one of those starting people. He doesn't have a home. He's a trucker, and he comes and stays in our basement occasionally. He doesn't have a place. It's hard for him to find a place. So I understand what that is, and it is hard. But in order for us to produce places that people can stay, it still costs a certain amount of money to build a quality building, and that involves philanthropy and partnerships. And those don't happen instantly. Holland isn't a knee-jerk community that as soon as there's a headline, we slap something up. We think about it, we work on it, we bring people together, we start a fund at the Community Foundation with $1 million to help developers be able to have more mixed use in their development to be able to support something affordable. We have Habitat and Jubilee working together so that we can have mixed use developments that are all the way down to 30% of the median income up to 120% of the median income. And then, of course, with an organization like Habitat, you have people that will walk with you and help you through all the other things in life. So it is a big community problem that is being addressed on a regional level with Ryan Kilpatrick through the Community Foundation. We have a lot of projects that he just outlined for council a couple weeks ago, and there are some that are still in the pipeline to be announced, but the larger projects are going in the townships because they have more land, and it's easier to be able to do it there. We have some smaller ones coming here, and there is a larger one that still isn't ready for bright lights, but I think it'll be great.
Okay, I'll say it again.
Thank you.
We are losing population of young adults in their 20s and early 30s to outlying areas such as Grand Rapids and Kalamazoo. What are your ideas on how to increase housing and rentals that are actually affordable for those caught in the middle of neither low income nor middle through upper income that can afford average cost of housing in Holland? Are you willing to work with the townships to help tackle this problem in order to retain a balance to our population and our community?
I'm absolutely willing to work with the townships on this. Housing is not just housing. Housing is also transportation. 20 years ago, I was the chair of the Lakeshore Habitat for Humanity Board, and we had a similar problem at that time. There were simply not enough vacant lots in the city of Holland for Habitat to build on. We couldn't afford lots here, and so what we did is we actually bought a bunch of property in Fenville, and we said to the homeowners or prospective homeowners, "We'll build you a house in Fenville," and they politely said, "No, thank you." And as a 30-something, I thought, well, that's crazy. We're offering to build you a house at cost and sell it to you on a zero-interest mortgage so you can have a home. And they said, we can't live in Fenville because we don't have a reliable car. If I get in my car in the morning and it doesn't start, I've lost my job. If I've lost my job, I've lost my house. And so unable to build in Fenville, unable to build in Holland, we got creative. And we formed Jubilee Ministries. I sat in the basement the basement of Maple Avenue Church on 3 folding chairs with Dirk Holkebor, who's the executive director of Habitat, and Dave Kuhl, who is the minister at Maple Avenue Church, and myself. We knew that the tools that we had at hand would not get the job done, so we created new tools. We're going to have to start looking creatively. We're going to have to start acting collaboratively. It's not just about dealing with the tools that we have now. It's about making the new tools that we need to be able to address the problems that are in front of us. And that's not just building houses. That's also looking at a transportation system that are going to get people from the homes that they have to the jobs that they need. We are losing people. We are losing young families. And we want to make sure that we're able to keep them and retain them in this great community. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. The next question goes to Mr. Bach. Sorry, I'm going to drill down on a little bit of, and the mayor suggested some of the projects that have been on the docket, if you will, and this goes into some of them. Several projects to build affordable housing or rentals for low-income or senior-level income have not gained traction in town. I am thinking of the 16th and River site and the old tire store site on River and 7th. Jubilee is doing a very nice job rehabbing rental and empty homes, but these are permanently to be owner-occupied. Affordable housing needs to be near schools, transportation, stores, and employment. How can we establish the seemingly impossible task, given the 3 most recent projects approved include upscale condos on River, 8th Street condo rentals, and upscale apartments on 16th?
Well, if a private property owner owns a piece of property and they want to follow the zoning rules and are not asking for any assistance from the city or the state, they can build whatever they want to build, and we need to make sure that we understand that. Private property owners have the right to do what they want to do with their property. Not only did I work with Habitat and Jubilee, I've been a real estate attorney for the last 27 years. I work with real estate developers. You know what real estate developers need to do? They need to turn a profit. And so what we need to do is find ways to be able to make it more attractive for some of those folks to be able to turn a profit. Some of that's incentivizing it for them through tax breaks or pilot programs, but also it's making sure that the city is a proactive actor in this. 3 months ago, I wrote an op-ed in the Holland Sentinel called Alice is an Uptown Girl. And it's about looking at an area of property that the city of Holland owns that could be integral in the waterfront development and in creating mixed income housing along our waterfront. Very similar to a neighborhood I lived in when I was in law school in Milwaukee. I lived across the street from Lakefront. I was poor at the time. My rent, my mom's here. Mom, I was probably paying $250, $300 a month in rent for a studio apartment, and my window overlooked the back of a grocery store. But it's all I wanted and it's all I needed at that stage of my life. But across the street were $1 million condos with $1 million views of Lake Michigan. It was a great, dynamic, diverse neighborhood. We all lived there because we all had access to the lake. If we extend College Avenue north of 6th Street to 3rd, we've got 3 to 4 city blocks that we can create new development in, that the city can have a hand in making sure it gets developed for a wide variety of people.
All right, thank you. Ms. Mayor, I will reiterate. Several projects to build affordable housing for low-income or senior low-level income have not gained traction in town. I am thinking of the 16th and River site and the old tire store site on River and 7th. Jubilee is doing a very nice job rehabbing rental and empty homes, but these are permanent to owner-occupied. Affordable housing needs to be near schools, transportation, stores, and employment. How can we accomplish this seemingly impossible task, given the 3 most recent projects approved include upscale condos on River, 8th Street condo rentals, and upscale apartments on 16th?
Yeah, it is hard because a lot of times you have to get support from the state in order to be able to do those projects so that the numbers work for the developers. And we did okay that project in 16th and River, but when it went to the state level, I wrote a personal letter as well asking for that to please go through. That would really be helpful for our seniors. It's a great location for everything to work out, and we didn't get that. So we couldn't help it. And the one on River and 7th, that one did not go through council, but it again is private property now, and whoever wants to do what they want to do can do what they want to do as long as they follow the law. The other property council did vote for an affordable housing complex, and again, that was denied at the state level. So there are different levels to all of this process that you can't control. So we do the best we can with each project that comes to us. The council can only do so much. The city can only incent and plan and zone and abate. But really it's up to developers for what they're going to build. And so we can help and encourage and help to zone for it, but it does depend on the organizations that step forward and then, of course, the approval of council to get that through. And it's not always received well. Not everybody likes to have different types of housing in their neighborhood, and I think we've seen that also. So it's not always an easy process on many levels, but it is so worth the journey. And we are working hard at it because we really want people to be able to live here, to be a part of a vibrant community, to be able to have access to all that Holland offers, and to contribute to our businesses and our wonderful variety of life here. We are not all one kind of people. We are a variety of people, and that's what makes it such a strong community.
Thank you. Let me just follow up with this and say, what kind of changes would you like to see in terms of the zoning that would allow room for more affordable housing? Could you be specific about, this question is about what kind of changes would you like to see in our zoning?
Well, some of them would include more denser zoning, that you could have higher level buildings built in certain areas. And again, we'd have to be careful with that, but we're working on all the zoning for the city, redoing, it's called the Unified Development Ordinances, UDO. And it hasn't been redone since like the 40s. And extensively. So this has been a huge project over the whole past year in Planning Commission. We've hired a consultant that's been walking with us carefully, and it involves the height of buildings, the number of people you can have living in buildings, whether you turn owner occupied into duplexes, all that kind of zoning, depending on where it is and how it's done. It's very important for the future. Also, it is going to be set up so it's more developer friendly, so it's easier to understand, clearer language, not big paragraphs, more pictures, and all of that, so that it's much easier for developers to understand what the city would like to have done. And that is also really helpful for developers. And also, when we have things already approved, then they don't have to go back to their architects and pay to redo things and come back to us again. So we're trying to make things as streamlined and reasonable and clear as we can.
Mr. Box, what changes would you like to see in the city's zoning that would allow more room for affordable housing to be implemented?
I do want to see changes, but we need to make sure that first we're preserving our traditional neighborhoods. I was meeting with a group of voters the other night that were living in the historic district, and one of the things that they were concerned about is their neighborhood turning into a high-density area. And they said, we've got a problem house down the block. It keeps turning over. There are a lot of people that are moving in and moving out. And I said, one of the ways that we're able to solve that problem when we're looking at turning a single-family home into a multifamily home is to require that those homes be owner-occupied, that one half of that duplex is lived in by the owner. If you're living in an owner-occupied place, you're going to be a whole lot more careful about who it is that you're picking as a tenant. I spent about a dozen years as one of the busiest landlord-tenant attorneys in the county. I did an awful lot of evictions on Mondays in Holland and on Fridays in Allegan. I was very lucky, very blessed to work with landlords that kept their places up. But there were landlords in the community who simply did not keep them up and were able to charge almost as much rent as my clients did. It was incredibly frustrating for my clients, but they were good people. We need to make sure that the properties are kept up well, that the city does a good job of inspecting them. I think that actually increasing density and increasing height can be a good thing in some neighborhoods. I had a meeting with some voters over at Freedom Village, and they said, what do you think about height and density? And I thought for a minute, and then I looked up, and I said, you know what? We're in the middle of the highest density, highest height place there is in the community. So it can be done correctly. And when the mayor talks about streamlining the development process, the process that council is looking at right now is a 31-step flow chart. I've worked with developers. No developer wants to have to go through a 31-step flow chart. We can do better.
Okay, thank you. I'm addressing you first.
All right.
And we're going to switch gears to a more cultural issue, and this is a personal question as well, so bear with me. This person says, my daughter is gay and has been in a committed marriage for 7 years. Despite growing up in Holland and being very close to family here, she rarely visits Holland because she feels judged and unsafe here. There are many people and organizations in Holland supportive of LGBTQ acceptance and rights, but our city government has not been expressively supportive of these rights. What leadership would you, as mayor, provide on this issue so that my daughter can feel welcomed and protected in her hometown?
I think the attitude of celebrating the value of everyone who calls Holland home starts at the mayor's office. My sister's gay. I officiated at her wedding. I became an internet minister so I could officiate at her wedding. She is a phenomenal mother, grandmother, sister, and daughter. All she wants to do is live her life and love her partner. I have a lot of friends in Holland who are gay, business people, leaders in this community who do not dare bring their partner with them to public events for fear that they're going to lose their job. We can't have that. I've had friends move from Holland for that very same reason. We need to respect the rights of everyone in this community. And as I said, that'll start with the mayor.
Okay, Mayor DeBoer, would you like me to read it again? Okay. This person says, my daughter is gay and has been in a committed marriage for 7 years. Despite growing up in Holland and being very close to family here, she rarely visits Holland because she feels judged and unsafe here. There are many people and organizations in Holland supportive of LGBTQ acceptance and rights, but our city government has not been expressively supportive of these rights. What leadership would you as mayor provide on this issue so that my daughter can feel welcomed and protected in her hometown?
Yeah, I feel really bad that she feels that. I'm sure it's really hard for that mom to not see her daughter very often, and for her daughter to have those kind of feelings about her hometown. You know, we had a vote 8 years ago in extending the LGBT, at the time it was LGBT, addition to protection in housing. And the council voted not to add that level of protection to the policy, that we would stick with the Elliott Larson policy that we have at the state and federal level. And that, I would say, is the only time that the government has dealt with that issue. I think personally that every single person is created by God and is really intrinsically valuable because of that. Whatever their sexual preference is their business, and they should have the freedom to make whatever choices they choose to make. And I and everyone else needs to respect that and treat them with dignity and love. Anything short of that is not what this community is about. Holland has always been a diverse community, and it's a place where people should feel welcome and accepted. It's not about sexual choices, it's about a person. And a person is 100% valuable, whatever their choice. And helping to love people is intrinsically important in this community. And when we don't do it, we should be ashamed of ourselves.
Follow up to that, which goes to you this time. What is your position currently regarding the explicit legal protection for LGBTQ rights in housing and in employment? Like, have you changed, or how do you feel since that vote currently?
You mean, would I change my vote on that issue?
I mean, yeah.
I think there's much more that we need to think about in that statement. We've added LGBTQIA. I don't know what else is on that list. And I do think that it sounds like it's a good thing, but when you think through to balancing the freedoms that everyone should have, one person's freedom stops at the next person's freedom, and we have to be able to respect each other's freedoms. And everybody has different convictions, and that's important also. And it's hard when you have a civil rights case and you discriminate against a person who has a different color skin. That is obvious. You don't always know if somebody is Q, I, or A when you're dealing with a person. And then to be held legally responsible and have to prove yourself innocent of that charge, it would be a hard thing. So a lot of things sound nice on the top, but as you really go through it in the legal context, it can be much more complicated. And so I would need to know more about how we can make that work, balancing everybody's freedom.
Mr. Box, what is your position regarding explicit legal protection for LGBTQ rights in housing and employment in Holland, and why?
Let me be a little more clear, I think, than the mayor was on that. If the same language came up again, I would absolutely vote for it, 100%. I have a difficult time when somebody says, well, you can't tell what somebody's sexual preference is simply by looking at them. I don't know why you need to know. I know you can't tell somebody's religion by looking at them. You don't need to know. People's rights need to be protected. This is a very personal issue for me. I cannot imagine my sister and her wife being denied housing because of who they are. I cannot imagine them being denied employment because of who they are. We've got incredibly valuable people in this community who are leaving this community because they do not feel welcome here. They do not feel protected here. As I said, I know pillars of this community who have said, I do not dare bring my partner anywhere. Think of people you know whose partner you've never met. There are a lot of people in this community like that. And they're leaving us, and we're losing talent. This is not only a social issue, this is an economic development issue. Our employers are saying we need to reach out. There's a reason why the largest tent at the Pride event was a Herman Miller tent. Herman Miller knows that they need to reach out to these communities because they know that these people are talented. They know that they need them if they're going to survive, and we do too.
Okay, we'll move. We had several questions on this that's been in the news as well, and Mr. Box, this is for you. The Holland Civic Center has been a source of pride for so many people. With so many large donations supporting the rehab, why does it seem like this is a budget buster, and how would you handle the cost overruns?
It has been a budget buster. One of the great analogies that was made by a member of our board, and if you didn't hear me in my opening statement, I'm the chair of the Civic Center board. Believe me, this is an issue that I think about every single day. One of the great analogies that was made by one of the members of our board is launching a big venue like this is a lot like launching a battleship. It slides down and it hits the water and it shifts a little bit, and then it finds its balance, but then you need to take it out on sea trials for a year or so to figure out what it can do. The first year was difficult. To be honest, completely difficult. It was a perfect storm of bad things happening, lots of turnover with employees, trying to get our feet underneath us. I believe that we have that now, but if you read the paper in the last 3 weeks, there were 3 articles based on our meeting that we had just 10 days ago. And the one that was most important for me was the one about the fact that they asked for another $95,000 to supplement the 2019 budget. And we said no. We said we're not going to do it. We decided we need to be good stewards of the taxpayer dollars. Those are hard-earned taxpayer dollars. It's a great venue. It's got a great future in front of it, but we need to make sure that we're holding VenueWorks' feet to the fire. And that doesn't mean standing up and leaving the room and not being there to work it out. I am dedicated to work this out with VenueWorks. I've got a meeting with them on Wednesday. They're going to come up with another proposal for us. I'm looking forward to that. I do still believe that they are the best organization to run that facility. The city is not equipped to run that facility at this point, so we're going to do what we can to right the ship and get it on course. But in the meantime, we're going to be good stewards of the taxpayer dollars.
Thank you. Mayor DeBoer, the Holland Civic Center has been a source of pride for so many people. With so many large donations supporting the rehab, why does it seem like it's a budget buster? How would you handle the cost overrun?
Yeah, we are really glad to have the Civic Center done. After so many years of that just kind of rotting there and being embarrassing, and those little rotting bathrooms, it wasn't ADA accessible. We didn't even have an elevator. I mean, it was unbelievable. So we do have a building, and it's beautiful. People love it. It has a touch of history, but it doesn't hold back the future. I'm so thankful for the huge numbers of people that stepped up to give us feedback and to serve on committees and to make all of that possible. And we knew also that the city is not in the business of running a convention center. And we wanted it to do way more than we had done before. We decided that we would probably put recreation more in local gymnasiums and also figure out another facility down the road. And we would use the Civic Center as a place to gather people because people love it there. And so we started that with thinking we'll hire a private firm that does that professionally, and we'll set up a civic center board that could be involved more professionally in the hospitality industry. And so that's why I took those requests to council to reorganize things so that we would have a board to run the civic center, just like we have a board to run the BPW, and then they would report to council. And so in that process, we knew that was going to be better. But we also knew it was a new thing we'd never done before. And so with all the problems that happened with the kitchen that came in late and all the turnover in employees, as Nathan has said, we had a lot of issues. I'm the liaison also on the Civic Center board, and it has not been an easy road. But at that last meeting, I really felt like we needed to tell Venue Works we're serious.
Thank you. Okay, so back to you. And a follow-up to the Civic Center, there has been controversies over what is permitted at the Civic Center and the events that are happening there. I would like to hear, this person says, what you would suggest for guidelines governing the future use of the building. I assume they're talking about the drag queen brunch, and I think it's the gun event is still there as well.
Yes, I have not had a private conversation with the attorney exactly what a government building can control. So I don't know where the line is. I do know I am liaison to the Civic Center board, but I did not know about the decision to have the drag brunch. No one told me. And so I read about it in the newspaper like the rest of the community. And then I was on the radio. Actually, I was out of town and took phone calls. And a lot of people were very upset about it. And I tracked with their emotion. And I said that I would not buy a ticket to the event as a personal choice. But the government cannot control the content of messages nowadays. So that was on the Supreme Court a decision. So billboards and all that kind of thing, it's a hard thing to know what the government is allowed to do in controlling content of events. And so I don't really know what our choices are going forward on what can be there and what can't be there. And so I'm not really ready to define that for the public. All I could do is comment personally on getting a ticket.
Okay, Mr. Box, considering the controversy about what is permitted at the public civic center, I would like to hear what you would suggest for guidelines governing the future use of the building.
Yeah. There are actually guidelines for the Civic Center Place. Our founding document said that the Civic Center Place is designed to provide the widest range of events and activities for the largest number of residents and visitors alike. And that's what it's doing. The other founding other founding policy for the Civic Center Place is that the City of Holland cannot discriminate based on content. We had this conversation at the last board meeting, and it was very clear to the Civic Center board members that we do have a policy in place. Now, Civic Center board, just to be clear, because I've had some people ask me this question, the Civic Center board does not make the decisions in terms of what activities and what events take place at the Civic Center. Venue Works does that. That's one of the things that we hired them to do. It would be incredibly inefficient for Venue Works to have to come to the Civic Center board and get approval for every single event that took place at the Civic Center. They know this is a public venue. We have lots of different public events. We have private events. We have public events. We have religious events that take place there. Matter of fact, my office was the financial sponsor for the multi-denominational hymn sing that took place the very first weekend that was there. We had John James, the senator, doing a political rally there. We are open for business at the Civic Center. In regard to the drag show, many of you may know that I did go, and I went to both of them because I am a representative of the city. I represent you in the Civic Center board. And Nancy, you are completely entitled to your opinion. We all are entitled to our opinions. But when a mayor speaks, the mayor needs to know that they speak for the entire community.
Okay. Now we go to Mr. Box for this question. We're switching gears a little bit to Energy. Do you think Holland's energy plan needs to be updated in light of the IPCC report, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change? And what additional steps do you think the City of Holland should take to address the climate crisis?
I'm by no means a climate expert, so I'm going to qualify everything I say with that. I'm just a small town attorney. But from what I read, we have much more that we can do. We've got a 50-year program that we put in place. We're 10 years into it. Circumstances have changed. Evidence has changed. We need to revisit that plan. We need to start being more proactive. We took some great big bites in that first 10 years. The gas-powered power plant was a great big first step, but a lot of the things that we have in front of us are just going to take smaller bites at that. Like I said, I'm not an expert. I don't know all of the answers on what to do, but what I do know in my own personal experience is that what we need to do is we need to make the right thing the easy thing to do. I'm easily trainable, but I like to have things done easily for me. My wife and I are recent empty nesters. All of our kids have gone off to college. Our daughter's at Michigan State, and we realized we still have the biggest garbage can that you can get in the city of Holland. There's a reason for that. Every now and then we fill it up. Why do we still have the biggest garbage can? Because it doesn't cost us that much more to have the big garbage can than it does to have the small garbage can. If it's twice as big as the small one, I know we're not paying twice as much. The city ought to be incentivizing people. They ought to be charging me more for that big can than they are right now. Another thing I know is we don't have recycling containers downtown. Now, I'm told we have single-stream recycling. I have seen videos of people sorting the trash. I know that people in Holland don't believe that all that trash is being sorted out. And the other thing that we can do is we can start putting more electric charging stations places. We've got a beautiful new parking deck on 9th Street. There's not a single electric charging station in the entire thing. There are more things we could do. There are more things we should be doing, and I plan to do them.
Okay, thank you. Mayor DeBoer, do you think Holland's energy plan needs to be updated in light of the IPCC report, Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change? And what additional steps do you think the City of Holland should take to address the climate crisis?
Yes, we're going to be getting a report on that in just a few weeks. I met with Peter Bogart a few weeks ago and asked him for what do you think are some things that we could add to what we have for a plan now in light of what's coming out. And so he worked on that, sent me a document. I sent that on to Keith, our city manager, and the whole committee, the sustainability committee, and the other committees that are working on this. They're all in consult with each other, coming up with what they will recommend to council in a few weeks. So we should get an updated version of what they're thinking. It is going to be very hard for us to match the dramatic change that we had in our carbon footprint by going from a coal-burning plant to a natural gas plant. That's about as dramatic as it gets. So we will have to be working with residents, and our residential power use is only like 20% of what the BPW does. 80% is of business work. So, and they have been working very hard with business and redoing all their lighting situations, and it is hard to be in the power business because you have to incentivize everybody not to buy your product. And, when I addressed the power plant, the power companies when they came for their convention here, I'm like, wow, that is something. To have a business plan where part of it is to lower your product usage in order to, and then you still have to expand and be profitable enough to reinvest in your company. So they have a very complicated business model, and it is really important. And they believe in being responsible with energy. Our whole community does, and so it's great to have a public entity help us.
Thank you. Okay. Back to you. I would like to know, well, this person would, what is, in your opinion, should be done with the old power plant site? Do you support public lake access or some type of access at that site?
I think any successful community has public access to water. So I think that's one of the biggest things that came out of all of that community conversation, all of the drawings, all of the feedback. I never heard anyone say lock people out. I think we all agree that we want to have public access to that water. How far back the public access goes on the property itself, I don't know. That would have to be determined yet. And what exactly is going to be done with that power plant and the area around it, again, nobody knows. I mean, this is the huge question, and so exciting a question for the city of Holland, that we don't know what developers would step forward or what the potential investment is, whether there'll be land swapping or whether private property owners will want to stay with their properties. We don't know. We can't make those decisions for people. But having this huge public conversation is great because it gets everybody talking and dreaming and getting excited about it. And, everyone has choices and they will be making them. And there are conversations going on all the time. So we really don't know where it's all going to land. And but we do have to have public conversations because whatever we do with property on the water involves a public vote. So if we lease it for more than 39 years, or if we sell it or swap it, all of that is a public vote. So the public needs to know, and the public needs to have its input in the whole decision-making process. And how fun has that been? Oh my goodness, it's so cathartic watching all these people come around with ideas and kids with their drawings and all of that. It's just been such an exciting process for the community, and I've loved watching it and being a part of it.
Mr. Box, what in your opinion should be done with the old power plant site? Do you support public lake access or something else on that site?
Absolutely support public lake access. As part of the public process for this, that was the number one request from the public, is they wanted public access to that property. It's a great property, it's a beautiful site, and it's an amazing building. I toured that building several months ago. It's much cooler and prettier inside than you can possibly imagine, and there are a lot of opportunities for that building. It's a beautiful old Art Deco building, and it is built like Fort Knox, and sitting on a big cement pad underneath it. I know that the city has estimates for what it's going to take just to take the old scrubbers off and the smokestacks off, what it would cost to take the building down itself, and what it would take it all the way straight down to the ground. As a city, we need to decide what we're going to do. But this is not a 5-year plan or a 10-year plan. This is a 20-year, a 50-year, a 100-year plan. We've got one chance to do this, and we need to do it right. I don't want to rush into it. As the chair of the Civic Center Place fundraising campaign, I was asked to come in at the point where they were already bulldozing the site. It is very, very difficult to operate on a beating heart. We need to make sure that we have our ducks in a row before we start with any kind of project that's going on here. I agree completely with the mayor that we do need to have public input. We've had a whole lot of that now. This is going to also be an incremental process. I think that one of the better places for us to start is to start with something like the Uptown project, and that may incentivize private property owners that are there to think to themselves, is our current use of the property our highest, best use of the property, so they can be partners with the city in the development in the future.
Okay, back to you. Let's talk about education a little bit. What do you think the state mandated school of choice policy is, how do you think the state mandated school of choice policy is affecting Holland Public Schools?
It's caused them to shrink immensely. I'm a public school kid. My wife teaches in Hudsonville. I went through the public schools. My dad was a superintendent of schools in Grand Haven and an educational administrator. My mom was a Title I reading teacher, taught thousands of kids to read. And I've been good friends with Brian Davis for many, many years. Holland is a landlocked community. One of the things that's great about Holland is it's a wonderful place to live. One of the things that makes public schools in Holland difficult is that it's a wonderful place to live. People come here, they move here, and they stay here. And by adding schools of choice into the program, that has diluted the public schools' ability to be able to retain students. I'm all for private schools. I think Holland Christian is great. I think that the charter schools have done a good job at educating, but the public schools themselves, the Holland public schools, are at a disadvantage. They have to take everyone, and that makes life difficult for them. Now, my wife is a graduate of Holland Public Schools, graduated in 1986. All three of our children went through the Holland Public Schools and got great educations. There are phenomenal teachers at the Holland Public Schools, and I will disagree with anyone who says that you cannot get a great education there. It's a great system, but it needs our help, and the city ought to be doing everything that it can to partner with our public school system, because if we lose that public school system, we are going to lose a vital part of our community. It's a great school, but it has been suffering, and we need to do everything we can to help.
All right, Mayor DeBoer, do you think that the state-mandated school of choice policy is affecting Holland Public Schools adversely?
Oh, of course. It gave people more choice, and Holland is landlocked. So when I think it was Grand Valley was in charge of deciding how many charters could be established in Holland, I said 2 or 3, and that's a hard thing because there's only a certain number of students in Holland, and so and my husband's teaching at Holland Public. My daughter taught there for a while as well, and it is a hard thing because people see charters as more parent-run and not as system-run, and so that people leave for whatever their personal reasons, and it makes it harder for the public school becomes kind of the post office that's responsible for every single person. As it's the public institution, and it is true that they need our support, and we have met with the Holland Public Board. We had several meetings trying to help them with what could you do that would incentivize a better system, and we worked through marketing because that is really important now in today's world. Every organization has to market, even if you're just a public entity. As a city, you need to market. You have to craft your own message, and the public school system as well needs to tell its stories. The stories of success, the kids that graduate understanding the world as it is today and being comfortable with people from all different places. I mean, I don't know what the latest count is. I think it's like 35 languages. Many times my husband would have a student that had never spoken English show up in class. And there can be a lot of turnover as well because these kids have come from all different places and then leave because of whatever situation. And but each child is a gift to the community, and each child needs to be cared for and helped and encouraged.
As a follow-up, this person says, and it's specifically to you, but if you promote Holland schools, why did you homeschool and weren't the public schools good enough for your particular scenario? Like you have promoted, you are a homeschool promoter. Can you explain why?
I don't really know if I promote homeschooling, but
This person says, if you promote Holland schools, why did you homeschool?
I made a personal choice to homeschool. I wasn't involved in anything. We lived in the township at the time, and I did not know. I made a decision to homeschool our first child and decided to see how it went. And we did that for a year, and then we had, then 2 years later, our daughter became the age to go to school. Thought about that and started her at home. Actually, it was a every year decision for each child individually. I never expected to do it that many years. I am a teacher by degree. I had taught middle school and high school in Chicago area, Wisconsin, and Holland, but I left before our first child was born and stayed home. And so I guess it was kind of hard for me as an educator to send my kids to someone else if I could do it myself. So I really enjoyed having that time with them. It is not a decision for everybody. I am not saying that. And really, I didn't say it much to people because if you say you homeschool, they think you live in a cabin and make your own soap and you're totally so I never told anybody. And if we would go to parties, and especially like in education parties, oh, what do you do? I'm home with the kids, I wouldn't say that I homeschooled because then nobody would talk to you. It was totally weird. So it's just a quiet thing that we did as our choice, and I just chose to do it. I'm not making a choice for anyone else.
Fair enough. Mr. Box, if you promote Holland schools, what is your position on homeschooling?
I give anybody who homeschools their kids a whole lot of credit. I don't think there's any way I ever could have done it. Elizabeth and I have talked about it in the past, and we've thought those people that homeschool their kids are really, really amazing people doing that. Everybody's got the right to have their kids go to whatever school that they want their kids to go to. Our choice happened to be Holland Public Schools because my wife went there, our kids went there, our daughter-in-law went to Holland Christian and had a great experience there as well. Elizabeth and I were youth group leaders at Christ Memorial early on in our marriage, and we had kids in our youth group that were Holland Public School kids. We had kids that were Holland Christian kids, and we had homeschooled kids. And they were all great kids, and all kids getting a great education. I think everybody ought to have the right to choose where they want to have their own children educated.
Here's an interesting one to you, Mr. Box. Public safety is half of the city's budget. I don't know if that's accurate, but can you explain how our public safety system is organized, and if you would continue to want it to be organized this way?
I'm just going to take as a fact that it's half of the city's budget because I can't confirm or deny that at this point. That's the lawyer in me speaking now. And I actually had a conversation today with someone who was a retired firefighter in the city of Holland. And from his perspective, that the two organizations working together under one roof may not be the best model for the city of Holland. I honestly don't know whether that's true or not. We had a great conversation, and I said to him, one of the areas of this community that I have not spent a lot of time researching is how our public safety system is set up. It is one combined system with both the fire department and the police department. The police department's a much larger department than the fire department is, and I know that Chief Messer is doing a great job at the top of that, but that's something that we want to make sure that we are funding appropriately. If it is half of the city's budget, it's half the city's budget for a reason. I'm never going to say that we need to reduce the number of our police department, our police members, or our fire department members. The public safety of this community is of utmost importance. If we need to look at reorganizing that system, let's take a look at reorganizing that system. But there isn't anything that I would ever be looking at to reduce the number of officers who are out there and protecting us every single day, whether they're policemen or firemen.
Okay, Mayor DeBoer, public safety is half your budget. I shouldn't be telling you this. Can you explain our public safety system and how it is organized, and if you would do anything to change it?
Yeah, way back when we had the double retirement of the fire chief and the chief of police. And so at that time, we decided that was a good time to think about public safety and combining those departments. And so we hired Alex Weiss, who is a consultant that's gone all over the country. He came in to help us talk about that and think about it. And I think he was kind of pushing toward combining everybody, cross-training everybody. But in my heart of hearts, I could not go there. That the same person would have, a syringe, gun, and a hose in his trunk and show up for whatever and be equipped and excited about whatever it is. And because I think there's a definite difference in the kind of person that goes into fire safety versus police. Some people want to run into a burning building and fight that fire to save the world and save those people, and other people want to run into a gun-infested situation to save people, and those are two different kinds of people. And when I would go out of state and talk to somebody who didn't know what I was in another police or fire situation, I would just like go around Florida or wherever, can you tell me off the record, how do you feel about a public safety department when you combine them both and cross-train everybody? And I said, aren't they kind of different people? And they said, yeah, really, we are. The same person doesn't want to do both kinds of emergencies. And when you want to have somebody handling the most important things that are happening in your community, I wanted to have the people that love to do that. So we did combine administration with Matt Messer, and he was well accepted by the fire services, and Chris Tinney was ready to become chief, but he never opened the desk. Rats.
All right, thank you. Mr. Box. No, it's actually you. Sorry. I should have brought my little sheet. I didn't bring it. Do you support the sale of recreational marijuana in the city of Holland?
No. The council voted on that. We don't want to do that.
Okay. Can you expound on why you voted against it, or why you were supportive of that?
The city as a whole voted against it. And when we hosted the MML conference here in Holland back in 2017 for the first time, which was great to have all the cities represented here, they brought in an assistant prosecutor from Colorado who had firsthand experience with the recreational marijuana as it is unfolded in Colorado. Oh, my goodness. And she said, I hate to be saying all these bad things about my own state, and it was one slide after another of what's happening in the emergency room with children that are ingesting candy that they think is candy, but it isn't. And she told stories of somebody that, you have cannabis infused cookies, and so somebody takes a bite and doesn't feel anything, takes another bite, doesn't feel anything, finishes the cookie, jumps off a balcony. There's one story after another of the unintended consequences of doing that in your community. And, I know it is legal across the state now for people to be able to smoke it or whatever they want to do, but we don't have to sell it as businesses. And one person I talked to who had a friend in Colorado, I'm like, now you visit your friend in Colorado, you notice any differences? She said, yeah, like the corner stores. I would just really like to have an ice cream store somewhere instead of every corner store be another cannabis something or other. And then they have sometimes places explode because it's a highly they try to take the chemical down to the most intense amount, and in that process can cause explosions.
Okay. Mr. Box, do you support the sale of recreational marijuana in the city of Holland, and why or why not?
Yeah, I don't. I was actually sitting in a city council meeting next to Chief Messer the night before the legalization of marijuana ordinance went into effect. And I leaned over to him and I said, so tomorrow, does your job get easier or does it get harder? Because I was thinking to myself, well, you're not going to have to worry about all of these marijuana arrests that you're going to be taking. He looked at me and he said, it's going to get exponentially harder. And I said, how come? And he said, because the federal government does not allow the sale of marijuana. Even though it's legal on the state level, it's not legal on the federal level. And what that means is that every marijuana business needs to be a cash business. They can't have bank accounts. They can't accept checks. They can't accept credit cards for all the things. It needs to be done in cash. And he said that creates crime. He said we're going to have an increase in the amount of violent crime that's going to take place in this community simply because there are people going to be transporting large amounts of cash and large amounts of drugs throughout the community. I think that the city actually did a great job in deciding how they were going to regulate the use of marijuana in the community. They said it's not allowed to be used in a public place. I've been to communities where it's legal. We were in Seattle a couple of years ago, and we would be walking down the street with our daughter. She was only 16 years old at the time, and we'd walk past a restaurant and we'd go, boy, that's a smell. I haven't smelled in an awfully long time. People out on the street smoking marijuana. That's their right to do it in the state, but I don't want to have to smell it. The other thing is, I'm an attorney. I deal with the state regulatory agencies all the time. The state has not issued rules on how all of these businesses are going to operate and how that's going to be done. There isn't any reason in the world we should offer the right to have a business in town that we don't know how we're going to be able to regulate. So no, I'm against it in the city of Holland.
Can you explain, you, Mr. Box, right? I'm waiting for my lady here. Can you explain the journey of fiber optics in Holland and its future as you see it?
It's been a slow but deliberate journey in my mind. I think it's great that we're starting to put that system in place, but I think that it needs to expand quite a bit. It's been great for businesses in the downtown area. I was on the Tulip Time board for several years, and one of the issues that we had was having enough bandwidth on our internet to be able to deal with, especially during Tulip Time week, being able to handle all of the traffic that we had. When Tulip Time moved its offices and suddenly had fiber available to it, it was like a door opened up for us. It was absolutely fantastic. We need to expand it to the general public. And I think that the first place that we ought to expand it into is the core city area. We have families in this community that do not have internet access in their homes. I have kids in school. Every single homework assignment they have involves some interaction with the internet. If you don't have internet in your home, if you can't afford to have the cellular internet on your iPad or on your phone, you've really only got one option, and that's to go to the public library. When I was on the library board, we had the same kind of tax cuts that the mayor was talking about in the city. The library board's budget was completely from tax revenue. And when the property values in Holland dropped, so did the library's budget. And the way the system works is that your property tax revenues drop exactly the same way your property values do, but they climb back very, very slowly. We took a huge hit, and that was a hit in hours. We lost weekend hours. We lost nighttime hours. Guess which hours kids do homework? We need to make sure that our core city kids have the tools they need to get the grades that they need in school to be able to be good citizens.
Thank you, Mayor DeBoer. Can you explain the journey of fiber optics in Holland and its future?
Yeah, Holland was way ahead of the curve. We put in fiber optics in order for the BPW to talk to itself. And so we had a big system, and then we connected with the schools and the hospital, and all of that came in before the state started regulating. So that was wonderful for us. And now we have this great skeleton, but we'd like to fill it out further. And now we tried downtown with a pilot project, and everybody loves it. Once you get screaming fast fiber, you want nothing else. The way everything downloads so quickly, and that it is something that everybody is loving downtown. So we've been working with the BPW on how can we get this out further? How can we connect with neighborhoods with fiber? And so many people have said, if you get fiber in Holland, I am there. I don't care about anything else. And since we've been 4 years as the very best place to start a small business in the whole country, it's time to add fiber to that. So yes, we had a presentation from the BPW a few weeks ago, and I think they've figured it out because they found a little city in Idaho that didn't have good connections. So they actually, as a government, put in this fiber optic system, and then all the companies for content competed for the business, and the families got the price of, I think it was 50 something per month that they could have fiber along with the assessment to connect with fiber. So that sounded great. And the BPW loves the idea of doing infrastructure, not content. And before we had kind of been talking about both. So now they found their lane in infrastructure and really loving that. And we also have the possibility of companies competing because they won't have to deal with the infrastructure. So it is sounding really good. So we want to start a big community conversation, just like we did with the waterfront and with the power plant and with the civic center, with bringing a whole group of people together and figuring out how we want to launch this in the city.
Okay. All right. As mayor, I'll read it just as it says. What would you do as mayor to support the core community values of integrity, decency, and respect?
I think, those are the kinds of values we all want. And that's really what Holland has been based on. You know, we have a wonderful city, not because of a bunch of slipshod people you couldn't trust doing whatever they felt like doing, whenever they felt like doing it. It's because we had generations of people that showed up here at great personal sacrifice to stay with it, even though most of their relatives died, and then rebuilt after they had a fire over the entire city and stayed through all the different wars, developing industry, shouldering it through the demise of the auto industry in Detroit, diversifying what we do, how we do it. All kinds of challenges have been met by this community. We stand on the shoulders of amazing people. It's not something we can take for granted. And it's because of their character. It's because they were people of integrity that treated each other with respect. I'm not saying anybody's perfect. I mean, none of us is perfect. There's always going to be something wrong with any one of us. But overall, those are the community values. That when you shook somebody's hand, you meant it. They didn't have to get it in triplicate. It was going to happen. If they said they were going to be at work that day and they woke up with a cold or they didn't feel like it, or maybe they even had to find a different form of transportation, they still got there. No matter what kind of challenges they were facing in their family, they still did their job. And they still stayed overtime. And a lot of times they didn't complain. And they worked at it day after day after day to build businesses that we can be so proud of today.
Mr. Box, what would you do as mayor to support the core community values of integrity, decency, and respect?
I think that it goes to one of the pillars of our campaign, and that is to celebrate the value of everyone who calls Holland home. Holland is a rich tapestry of people. We've got a great tradition in this community of having big dreams and having big ideas and being willing to do the hard work that it takes to get there. But we've got people in this community who don't feel like they are part of those big dreams. And as mayor, the very first thing that I'm going to do is start sending the message to everyone in the community that you are valued, you have something to contribute, and we want you to contribute to this community. We're not just going to make a place at the table for them, we're going to invite them to the table. We're going to bring them to the table and ask them what their ideas are for the future of Holland. My family's history goes all the way back to the Pillar Church. It's been fun to watch the rebuilding of the Pillar Church and the redoing of the pillars because my great-great-great-grandfather and his father made the pillars on the Pillar Church. I can go back that many generations in this community. I didn't grow up here, actually. I grew up in Mount Pleasant because my parents were educators and moved around. So I went to Mount Pleasant High School and came here to Hope College. I'd had a bad experience at the University of Michigan, and my last day, a Monday at the University of Michigan, I walked across the diag at U of M, and not a single person looked at me. Not a single person acknowledged my existence. The next day, I was at Hope College and walked through the Pine Grove. Every single person said hello. Hope College was like a warm blanket. This community is like a warm blanket, but we need to be a warm blanket for everyone. And that's what it means to have integrity, to have decency, and to have respect.
Well, I think this one is a great follow-up really quickly to you, Mr. Box. There's an expression that people say in this town, if you aren't Dutch, you aren't much. How has that expression changed or not changed in its meaning for you over the years?
Full disclosure, I'm half Dutch. This half over here, Dutch on my mother's side. I play a mean game of Dutch bingo. I really do. You don't just pull that my great-great-great-grandfather built the pillars in the Pillar Church out of anywhere. But I also, because I didn't grow up here, I recognize how difficult it can be in this community. As I said, for 17 years, I worked with the Chamber of Commerce's leadership program. And one of my responsibilities with that program was to give the new people a 2-hour whirlwind explanation of Holland history. I'm not much of one for dates and names. Anybody who's been on one of my Tulip Time tours knows that I'd much rather tell you stories about what goes on here. And the questions that I would get from people are, well, what do you mean I can't mow my lawn on Sundays? And for a long time it was, wait a minute, you can't buy alcohol on Sundays either, but you can drive to Saugatuck to do it. And if you go out to Point West, you can get a mixed drink, but you can't get a beer. How does all of that work? Well, being what I always referred to myself as a transplanted native has really made it easier for me to be able to navigate those waters than a lot of people have been able to. But that term, we used to say it for fun. I used to have a button that I wore that said, if you're not Dutch, you're not much. But now there are people in this community who look at that and say, what you're saying to me is you don't belong here. And that simply cannot continue. We need to be a more welcoming community. We need to be a community that says to people, all of you have value, not just the people that moved here, not just the people that can play a great game of Dutch bingo, but everyone who comes to this community and wants to contribute.
Mayor DeBoer, there's a saying in this town, if you aren't Dutch, you aren't much. How has this expression changed or not changed for you over the years?
That's really an embarrassing saying. I was never a part of that. I mean, I heard of it after we kind of moved here, but I always feel sick to my stomach when I hear that. I hate it when people slap that on us in a magazine article or whatever. I was just like, really? That is just a haughty, nasty spirit. It's not Holland, Michigan. And really, after Van Rolte got here, Bob Swearinga was telling me that within 30 years, we had, I think it was about 30% of the population wasn't Dutch. And so I don't really think that, has been, I would hope that hasn't been the history, but, I didn't get here till 1978 or so. So I did notice, having moved here from Chicago, that the kind of feelings and prejudice that I had felt with people toward African American population in Chicago was kind of shifted over toward Hispanics in Holland. And I'm like, that's not right either. And that was horrible. We're never going to be perfect. We need to keep working on ourselves. Everybody is naturally wired to think of themselves as better than somebody else and wanting to look better than somebody else. And that's wrong. Really, we don't feel good about ourselves till we build up the person next to us. It is more blessed to give than to receive. And putting a spotlight on myself is not going to be what really fulfills me. Helping the person next to me find where they're going to feel great about what they're doing and the contribution they're making in the community is important.
Thank you. I thank you both for answering the questions. And we will do our closing statements now, starting with Mayor DeBoer.
So, what does it feel like to live in a place like Holland, Michigan? What does it feel like to be in a place that was settled back in 1847 in a difficult, dense woods? In 1871, the whole thing burned down. In 1893, we decided to start electricity so we wouldn't be stuck with gas lighting downtown. We have a 100-year Rotary that's been working all this time, 100 years of an American Legion band, 90 years of tulip time. We started Headcore and Lakeshore Advantage because we wanted businesses to succeed. We wanted to underpin them and find them property and work with them. Now we have generational family businesses. We have churches that are taking in refugees from all over the world. We did a lot with the Vietnamese people in history. We've started a community foundation with a massive endowment. We have Project Clarity. We're ready for school. We have a children's advocacy center. We have Benjamin Hope that helps those autistic kids. We had a downtown that was crumbling. Everybody's was crumbling, and so was ours. What did we do? We decided to plan, snow melt, invest, design, and invest some more. We had generations of industrious people, but to whom much is given, much is expected. We are a city on a hill. It's a small city with a big footprint in a world that's big enough to have problems, of other places, but we are small enough to come together, to share our value systems, and to come together to solve those problems and export solutions to the world. We know hard work. We show up. We persevere. We innovate. The world is hungry for a place where people can love each other even when they disagree, that they can think the best of each other, that they can support and encourage the good in each other, that they can work together to solve problems. We want to be that city on a hill that Ronald Reagan described, a tall, proud city built on the rocks, stronger than oceans, windswept, God-blessed, and teeming with people of all kinds living in harmony and peace. A city that hummed with commerce and creativity, and if there had to be city walls, the walls had doors, and the doors were open to anyone with the will and the heart to get there.
Thank you. Mr. Box.
I want to thank the League of Women Voters, and thank you to everyone who's here tonight and all of those people who are watching online. And thank you too, Nancy. When I began my leadership journey in high school, I was asked why I wanted to get involved. My response was, because I love people and I want to help and I want to serve. It's an honor and a privilege to serve. It's life-giving work. And I'll take that to the mayor's office. For years, my motto has been, and I get to live here. It's an expression of pride in the community that I love. Holland is a great place to live, and together we can make it even better. I'm guided by a deep and abiding faith, a faith that calls me to love my Lord with all my heart, all my soul, all my mind, and all my strength, and to love my neighbor, all my neighbors, as myself. For 20 years, I've answered that call to serve the community and the neighbors that I love, and I want to continue that service in the mayor's office. Holland, we have challenges, we've got opportunities, and we have aspirations. Our biggest challenge is housing. We can no longer keep this on the back burner. We need a mayor who can think creatively and work collaboratively to build the housing that Holland wants and needs. Our biggest opportunity is our waterfront. We've got a once-in-a-lifetime chance, and we need a mayor with vision. Let's get this right. And our biggest aspiration is to create a community that works for everyone. As your mayor, I'll celebrate the value of everyone who calls Holland home. Holland's future lies in meeting its challenges, taking advantage of its opportunities, and living up to its highest aspirations. And that future starts today. Holland must be a place where everyone says, and we get to live here. I'm a family man, a small business owner, a Hope College graduate, and a member of Christ Memorial Church. With your faith and confidence and your vote on November 5, I'll be your next mayor. Please vote for me on November 5.
Okay, thank you. On behalf of the League of Women Voters, I want to thank the candidates for agreeing to participate in this evening's forum. This is democracy in action, and if they did not agree to attend, we would not be able to hear this, so let's give them a nice round of applause. I would also like to thank you for spending this evening with us and showing that you care about democracy. Thank you to the city for broadcasting and for allowing us to use this facility. A special thank you to Tina Pollock, Jan Dahlman, and Barb Ferguson, and the rest of the League's Voter Services Committee for putting this on. If you're interested in learning more about the League of Women Voters, please go out in the lobby and get a brochure. Men can join as well. Save the date, October 21st, we will host a forum at Herrick Library for the at-large city council seat. That will be Monday, October 21st. Please also visit our website, vote411.org, for information on local and national elections. You can also watch the playback of this forum at our local website, lwv.holland.org. And don't forget to vote November 5. Thank you.